and stream. All right, so I accidentally pressed go live. So we're going to give everybody a few minutes here to hop on our live Programmatic Digest podcast. I thought when I pressed go live, there was going to be a countdown for me, more than 3 minutes. 3 seconds. But that's just the beauty of technology, right? So now let's just give everybody a couple minutes, Georgia. Let me see. I'm just checking if I can see it on the LinkedIn Live. Where would that be? Oh, it'll be under my profile. I don't really see it.
I can see that my team just shared the link internally, which is
Oh,
so
perfect.
great. Yeah.
Okay, 51 attendees. Okay, we got a party going on, so we're gonna kick it off. I know it's a little bit sooner, but welcome to a special episode. Oh wait, sorry guys. I was making sure that you guys were live on LinkedIn, so I'm gonna do it one more time. There you go. Okay. So welcome to everybody on the LinkedIn Live or on the YouTube Live. My name is Ellen Parker. I am your host, the Programmatic Digest podcast host. This is a podcast where we share knowledge and we highlight as much diversity as possible in our industry. I have a lot of experience on the programmatic activation side. That means that I know how to do what trader do. Okay, in the DSP, in the tool. And so I have a special guest today. Her name is Georgia Howell, and she is with the Draco team. The Draco team is sponsoring this podcast series. This is the third one out of the 3-part series. So if you have not checked episode 176, I think, with Stuart Sullivan, check it out. And episode 177 with Natalia Urales. Make sure you check it out on our YouTube channel or any podcast platform. So Georgia is here today to talk data, which is such a hot topic these days. But we're going to focus this podcast interview into 3 different ways, right? So what you want to do at the pre-campaign launch while the campaign is live, so mid-campaign launch, and then at the post-campaign launch, right? Because this is how we are able to prove to our clients that we know how to do things, and they should continue spending money with us, and they should trust us to expand in a different strategy or to test this new tactic or to remove or exclude some things. And so, Georgia, thank you so much for being here. We're honored of your presence. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe tell us, like, refresh everyone's memories about what the magic that comes with Draco.
Sure. Thank you, by the way, for having me and all of us on the team. So my name is Georgia Howell. I've been working at Draco for almost 5 years, heading up our managed services department. Before this, I started my career working in demographic research, which I think is a little bit related to audience creation, I guess.
I think it's so cool, by the way. Sorry to cut you off. But
no, not at all.
How often do we hear somebody that actually, I worked in audience research. Oh, so you've been doing this before Programmatic took it away. Okay, cool. I'm excited now. Come on.
Yeah, so I did that, and then I freelanced for a while as a digital media strategist, so helping small businesses with their websites and online presence and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of ended up in the digital marketing space. So at Draco, in my department, managed services, we run advertising, like programmatic campaigns for agencies generally. So we partner with agencies and help them execute effective programmatic campaigns. Draco as a whole, though, is a location data company. So that really is our USP on the managed services side, is that we have access to our own location database, and we're able to build out custom targeting for our campaigns. But also, because we actually own the data, we're able to build out additional types of analyses and run attribution internally as well. Which I think really adds something to the programmatic campaigns that we manage.
Yeah, for sure. And Draco, so if you want to hear more about Draco, I would strongly recommend the episode with Stuart. Like, he really gave us the background of of like how Draco came to be. But if you had to explain what you did, Georgia, to a 5-year-old or to my parents who are boomers, what would you tell them? Like, your day to day. What does your day to day look like?
Oh, I don't have any days that look like any other days.
How did yesterday look like? 2 days
So on my end, I still manage a few of our larger clients. So
ago.
I'm still client facing and I'm building audiences for them, doing media planning and forecasting, and managing their campaigns. So everything that comes with that, building the campaigns on the DSP, making sure that they have access to reporting, and working with our data team for any custom analyses that we do as part of pitching the campaign or post campaign, like trying to assess how well it performed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also manage a team of account managers at Draco. So they all do something similar there with their own clients and their own campaigns. All like any of our agency clients would be able to access our custom location-based audiences. We offer great reporting, I think, that's pretty transparent and available in near real time to all of our agencies. And then, like I said, no 2 days are similar. So there's always sort of miscellaneous things going on, like with stuff that we do in marketing or stuff that we do with the data team. Definitely what they're doing on the data team is extremely, extremely interesting. And definitely, I think, adds value to running a campaign with us. Yeah.
I love that because I very often we get partners that talk to us about the data. And I was attending the Biotech conference in New York because the London one just happened this week. And I was, I had the honor to to take notes for one of the session with Kasha Casey of Known, an agency, independent agency here in the US. And she said that, we can get the data. It's like there's data everywhere. Data is literally like everywhere. But what we are not able to do and we lack of is the insight that comes with the data. What do you think? Do you agree with that? Do you don't agree with that? Do you agree with some?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. We have built out, like, I just know for us, we've built out infrastructure that allows us to store and analyze our data effectively. I know, like, the raw data on our end is location data. It's a mobile ad ID, so the identifier of a cell phone, and then we get a latitude and a longitude and a timestamp, and that's really it. So that on its own isn't really giving you a lot of insights. We don't know anything about the user, which is, I mean, ideal from like a privacy perspective.
Yeah.
So really the ability to store that data in a cost-effective way and to query it, like to run analyses on that data also in a cost-effective way, is definitely key to actually being able to do anything with it, whether that's building out an audience, refining that audience. So if we need to make it smaller to better match a client's budget, or if we need to make it larger in order to deliver on a larger budget, being able to do that in a relevant way. So we don't want to just say, oh, we want to make it bigger, let's bring in another 50% like more users, but they're all at random. We want to make sure that we're capturing always the next most relevant user as we grow the audience. Same thing when we're shrinking it. We're not just going to take a segment that we build and cut it in half at random. We want to make sure that we're removing the least relevant users on our way down to like that most niche audience. That's just for the audience building portion. Running analyses, I think, takes, skill that I think that the data team has that is excellent. So if anyone has ever like studied statistics, I think it's something that on the face of it seems like, oh, it's very simple. Like, you think about flipping a coin, but like when you actually get into it, it's a lot more complex than that. So definitely a lot of respect for our data team and the work that they do, especially in building out the analyses that we work on for our clients.
And so in that perspective, right, with that said, what should traders like myself, buyers, anybody that work closely with the trading team, the people that are activating, executing, setting up in a DSP, whatever campaign we sold to the client, those people, what should they know about pre-campaign audience research? I know you touch on it a little bit, but can you build a picture for us to like really help them? This is what you should consider before.
So I think sometimes DSPs have internal tools that you can leverage, right? So Like for example, on a digital out of home platform, they might have some example, like some forecasting options that allow you to see characteristics of a digital out of home venue. If you're doing forecasting on a DSP like the Trade Desk, like they'll allow you to see how many users might be in a third party segment that you're layering in. I think that on our end, we're able to go a step further because we're able to customize the analyses for a particular advertiser or agency. So, for example, when we run tourism campaigns, because we are a location data company, we're able to isolate a resident from a visitor. So if we were to geofence an entire city or an entire state, we could capture all the users that we've seen in that city, let's say. We can remove anyone who we know lives in that city. So then by doing that, we've isolated a segment of users that are visitors to that city. We're then able to see where are those visitors coming from. So an analysis that we would often run for a tourism client is to say, okay, these are all the visitors to your city. What states are they coming from? Or how far away are they coming from? So what proportion of your visitors are coming from less than 100 miles away? What proportion are coming from more than 500 miles away? Knowing how many are day trip visitors, how many people might be road tripping or driving because it's a short distance, what proportion of your visitors are probably going to be taking a flight, the average length of stay. We can even go beyond that to like characteristics like what types of brands are they most interested in, like what stores are they shopping at, or we have census data as well. So because we know where our mobile devices are residing, we're able to attach them to census areas and look at the characteristics of each census area. So again, if you look at that same visitor audience, like visitors visiting a particular city, we could say, this is where they're coming from. This is how far away they're coming from. This is their average household income. This is, the average number of children in the household, like that kind of information. For a tourism campaign, knowing what states your visitors are coming from can definitely help you define a key market. So like where you would want to be concentrating your ad spend, but understanding what proportion of those visitors have children versus maybe like younger single people or stuff like that. That's also very useful in determining not just your geo-target, but your creative messaging. So, and if you can segment along those lines, you could be running different creative assets to families with children, to older retirees, to people who are coming to like party. So you can get like very specific, and you can advertise the aspects of your particular city, for example, to different types of people in different types of ways.
I see. And so, and so the best way, so if they don't know how to get started, like if they don't have a tool like Draco, what should they do?
Well, if you don't have access to Draco,
at my team, okay?
I would say, well, there's on a larger scale for larger agencies, there's a lot of market research companies that offer similar kinds of insights, maybe not as granular as ours. And so it would definitely be, if you're an advertiser or an agency that has larger amounts of resources, you can look into more custom market research. For smaller agencies, smaller advertisers, individual traders, I would look into the forecasting tools that are available on a particular DSP. Even if you're not working with a custom segment like ours, even if you're not working with the actual raw data like we would be, you can put together approximations of a particular audience size by looking at, okay, I want to serve ads in these cities. I want to restrict those ads to families with children in the household. These are very often data segments that are available via third-party market, like data marketplaces on a particular DSP. If you can kind of look and compare the audience sizes that you see through the forecasting tools, that can help you determine how large a segment is. Ultimately, though, you would need to have access to the raw data itself in order to kind of run more custom analyses. Anyone who has first-party data, working with a partner who has access to a clean room as well to allow you to kind of mix your data sets with other data sets and draw insights from that is also helpful for sure.
What you got me thinking is like, I know it's like the season of sport and soccer matches. And like, as you were talking, it made me think about how important it is to measure, like if you're only measuring the top line campaign result instead of going deep, like you're recommending, doing your proper research, optimizing, and then using the data to like continue optimizing and upgrade, adjust, whatever. It's almost like when you look at a match at the end of the day, or any type of sports where you see their scoreboard without actually watching, the game, you can assume like, oh, that team sucks, versus like, oh, actually they score the last goal in the last 15 minutes of the 90 minutes plus stoppage time, whatever. And like it doesn't give you the full picture. And sometimes you do have to watch the full game and keep the scoreboard in mind, because that's almost your goal. Like you have to have a vision, and that's how you have your clarity and your path, and you go for it. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, okay, I don't want to, you're focusing on your scoreboard right now, you got to focus on the reps, right? You got to focus on the game, because like the next competitor, the next advertiser, the next brand that's targeting the similar audiences is already looking at the reps. It's already identifying what is the next move, because they know how they play the game. They don't only focus on the scoreboard. And so with that said, Georgia, can you give us an example of like mid-campaign optimization? So like now we know, do your research before the audience, leverage tools like Draco, leverage tools like your audience researching. And also, I just want to add a little point of clarification before I forget here, is that if you do use your forecast tool in the DSP, please, please, please know that if your forecast shows you something one day, it will most likely show you something different another day. Okay. And also, a forecast is literally based on all, I guess, based on all the bids, not even the win, okay, because there's a win rate and there's a bid. But so based on the bids, this is how somewhat competitive the devices are available out here in the street, and the impression could be X. So it's very formula based, it's very estimate. It's a forecast. I was literally telling Georgia we had to go in the pool early this morning because we're forecasting like a storm at 12. And it's sunny outside, which I'm a little salty because, but it's a forecast. It's supposed to tell you like, just in case, this is what it might happen. Okay, so be careful when you look at your DSP forecast. So back to my question, Georgia. Can you give us a good example of like a mid-campaign optimization, or like based on your audiences? Or oh, you know what? Give us an example on when a client maybe leverage your Draco tool.
Sure. So one example we had was from a client that was running a nationwide campaign in Canada.
Okay.
And it was extremely broad targeting. It was geo-targeting only. And so essentially they came to us about, I don't know if it was halfway through the campaign, but during the campaign, and they noticed that they were running more impressions, less competitive overall areas for their industry. So, and this was just a facet of those impressions being cheaper in those less competitive areas. And they were saying, oh, well, we'd like to be running more impressions in the more competitive areas where we have like higher store competition, like density, but we don't want to be getting higher across the board. So how can we go about doing that? So we actually put together an analysis for them. I can show it to you if you
Go for it, please.
So I hope that it's working. Technical difficulties and such. So
your screen.
let me know when you.
Oh yeah. It's asking me to add the scene. Okay, there it is.
Okay. Cool. Sorry. So now it's just refreshing. But essentially what we did here was this was actually based on location data, but it was not based on user IDs because they were trying to target the entire country. So essentially what we did was we looked at every FSA. So that's like a regional area in Canada. And we looked at our clients' retail locations and their competitors' retail locations. And we identified the areas where they had over indexation and under indexation in terms of them versus their
what is an FSA? Excuse me.
It's this like a census tract in Canada. I believe our data team says it's forward sortation areas, but I believe that that's the census tracts. So you can see here that we were able to identify the areas with higher density. Oftentimes they were associated with cities, but not always. And so we were able to basically send them the list of postal codes for the higher density and lower density areas. So sorry, you can just look at all the rest of Canada basically here. So you can see that we have these clusters where there's more competitor presence. And so they were able to use that information to basically break their campaign into two separate sections, the lower competition areas and the higher competition areas. And so they were able to bid higher across the board in the higher competition areas and run the proportion of their budget that they wanted to there, while still maintaining presence in the lower competition areas at the lower bids that they wanted to use.
So, but this view that you're showing us is not client facing, right? So this is how you would go in, and you're showing for Canada, but I wanna like I wanna let my US base or anybody globally know that you guys are global. You can do this in the US and Canada. It's not just
yes.
okay.
I have another tool that I could show you that's like based in the US, like for a US analysis. And actually, this is something that our data team might use internally, but this we actually provided to the client. So they were able to go into this tool, decide what kind of level of like competition essentially they wanted, and then download the different like clusters of FSAs themselves to be able to like leverage that information.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's really cool. I remember doing it, and I think Stuart and I joked about it in one of our pre-call, whenever it was. But I remember him saying like, "Oh yeah, when you were go in the trade desk, you had to draw the polygon. I think it's called like using ninth decimal." And it took me back, like, oh my gosh, I used to do that. Like, you would have to like singularly, like, select. Oh my gosh, it was so painful. It used to take forever, and now look at y'all. Y'all are automatically. It makes it so much easier. I mean, it's great. And so now this client of yours, how's the best way for you? So let's talk about after this. So now you've recommended them this to them, and what would be the next step to your point?
Do you mean like, well, so in this case, they kind of restructured the campaign in order to bid more effectively. So they were able to take the higher competition, like geo areas, and separate them out into their own line item that they ran on higher bids. And then the lower competition areas, they were able to continue running on the lower bids. So this allowed them to keep all of their ad spend from concentrating in those lower density, lower competition areas.
Yo, this is so cool. Hold on. First of all, if y'all didn't hear, there's so much gem that just my brain. If you did not hear, it's like there's an opportunity to continue bidding where you're not performing as highly, but your competitors are performing, and then there's a way for you to redirect your budget where it works the best. And so not only is this tactic, right? It's called competitive conquesting. It's like if your competitors are here, you should bid on here. But where else are your competitors not? But your clients, your customer, your consumer, your audience is. And so I think that's always, if you're a trader and you're thinking about it, and I'm gonna wrap it up for you guys, okay? Because I got excited about what Georgia said, but competitive conquesting is one of those things that's almost an easier or efficient tactic to suggest for your clients. And all you have to do is target the competitor's audience location, where they're most likely to be nearby, where they're most likely to behave, where they visited those location base, right? Some cases it don't make sense. I don't know if it would make sense in pharma. I don't know, Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong. But something like leisure, entertainment, even political, like it would make so much more sense. Retail, especially retail, right? Like a McDonald's consumer versus Wendy's here in the US or versus somebody else like in the Canadas. But like, what do you think? Where do you think this works the best? What industry, what verticals?
So that campaign in particular, because it was a nationwide campaign with pretty much no targeting.
Okay.
They were interested in just targeting everyone over the age of 18,
Everybody?
essentially.
Wow.
Yeah, so that definitely is of interest when you want like very broad market awareness. You want to maintain share of voice, whether or not that person is going to be a customer. Like you just want to make sure that you are out there as much as your competitors are out there. It was a bit unusual actually in terms of something that we would do. It definitely used our location data, but it was not leveraging the audiences that we build, right? So that would be when we're targeting users individually. So I thought that I actually thought it was a very interesting example. It's something that our data team worked on, but then it kind of sparked an idea that we've been using in digital out of home pre-campaign analysis.
Yeah.
So we use because digital out of home is famously like not a very it's not an addressable channel in quite the same way as like a lot of programmatic is. And so because of that, your targeting options are kind of limited. You're kind of trying to infer where your users might be. And so we've started running similar analyses there for digital out of home, where we look at the characteristics that the client is interested in, targeting essentially. And we run an analysis to help guide their venue selection for digital out of home. So we did that for a campaign that was statewide in Washington State. And they were looking to target certain minority languages, which is definitely difficult to do with digital out of home, given that they are like, it's such a broad channel. So we actually identified the neighborhoods and I believe census tracts that were over indexed to those very niche languages. And we were able to guide them to those venues to run their campaigns there. And those were actually still in English, the billboards that they ran, because they were still running in Washington State, even if an area is over indexed, like there's still a lot of English speakers. What we then did was we geofenced the billboards to identify the users that had passed in front of the billboards. And we then layered on language targeting on top, and we ran addressable display ads in the language of those users. So in those 9 key minority languages.
Listen, if this is not how to do growth audience targeting, like, I think it's so refreshing that you guys took into account of, it's not just 1 or 2, it's like 9. And maybe it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's just a big deal. The fact that you took the time to do that, and you really serve as a true partner. And I was just having this conversation with Laurel this morning at Infillion. And I was telling her that sometimes we've just thrown the word partnerships or partner like it's nothing. It doesn't even hold value anymore. A partner is somebody that has your back, that will hold your hand, take it with you and say, listen, this is the path. You're trying to go here, but we don't know here, or we do know here and it's not recommended. Let me help you. It's like supposed to be somebody like that. And now we just throw partners like it's nothing. So it really has lost its true value, in my opinion. But like, this is what it is supposed to be. Like, I feel like this is a true definition of partnership, is where your clients are trying to target all these people. We got to take the extra step, the 9 extra step, to do it the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I agree with you, and I think that that's really important to us, like on the managed services side. I think we have great clients, and I do think that we do operate as a trading desk. We can run their campaigns, but we have other things that we're able to offer, and they're not necessarily appropriate for like every single campaign. But I think it's great that, I think it's great that I work at a place where if a client does run into an issue, like we're able to help them. If there's some problem like with a campaign, maybe we can step in with our analyses or with our data to help kind of bridge that gap. Because ultimately, like, we know that they're turning around and having to present something to their client, to the advertiser. And so I agree with that. Like, that is, I think, very important to us. Also, the idea of kind of learning together, because our data team is constantly coming up with like new things. Some of them I understand, some of them I hope to understand. And so it's great to also be working with people that are interested in like learning about these things together. Like, I think they're doing very, very cool stuff. So
I mean, I think we need data engineers, period. Like, there's so much data, and we need somebody to translate this data the same way we need traders to translate what the DSP is doing or how it is. I feel like there's a way to automate things with AI, but at the end of the day, there's always a need of this person, right? Like, there needs to be a human behind to help swift through, translate, really mine the data for us to understand and use it to our best advantage, right? And so this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. I guess we'll just wrap it up and close with this question, Georgia. It's like, what should a good campaign report include at this point, especially speaking of audience, highlighting an audience, the value of the audience that we're targeting?
Well, one thing that I would mention is a good report is one that you're looking at multiple times during the campaign, not just after the campaign has ended. So like on our end, we provide real-time reporting essentially to our clients. So every day they're able to see the performance from the day before.
Oh,
We are keeping an eye on the campaign, but like the fact that they're also able to keep an eye on the campaign is helpful.
yeah, that's
they're
cool.
they're the ones that are in contact with the client. So we have our own insights and our own optimizations, but they also have a better idea of like exactly what the client is looking for on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So I think that that's definitely important. If you're working with a partner, letting them know what kind of reporting you're going to need, because sometimes there are certain ways in which we structure the campaign that we're not able to extract the insights at the end, where if we had known at the beginning, we could have broken out the campaign structure in such a way that we would be able to compare like audience A and audience B, right? Okay. So if you're working with someone, or even if you're doing it on your own, thinking ahead to, okay, when you're structuring the campaign, what kind of insights am I going to need? It's not just if you're running the same assets and you have two different groups of people, you might think, oh, let me just put them into the same campaign line item. Like just a basic example, but if you're targeting men and women and you're running the same creative assets, you might just target all people over 18, for example. But if you know that at the end of the campaign, you might want to compare those two sets against each other, it might be worth breaking them out separately in order to be able to look at performance data separately between those two groups.
Yeah.
But like obviously there are more intricate examples, but thinking ahead as to like what kind of reporting you'll need at the end is definitely important. Thinking ahead to what type of attribution you'll be measuring.
Wow.
If you're looking at online conversions versus in-store conversions, you need to keep in mind the types of data that you're using in your campaign.
Wow.
If, for example, if you're targeting with mobile ad IDs, like a lot of our audiences are based off of, running in-store conversion tracking is going to work fairly well because that tends to be a mobile ad ID based conversion metric. I'm trying to think of other things that would be important, but definitely thinking ahead to what you'll want to look at the end of the campaign is definitely important at the beginning of the campaign, which is, I think, something that you guys touched on as well in the media planning podcast a bit. But being transparent with your partner about the KPIs of the campaign as well, because oftentimes they might have insights or suggestions ahead of time or during the campaign. It's finding out that like the client, maybe said awareness, but at the end of the campaign want to know like, oh, were we tracking conversions? Well, we never talked about that before, right? So that's an important thing to be upfront about in order to ensure that you have all the data you need at the end.
Yeah, and again, like you said, it's important to have that conversation before with your clients. They would know. I think we give them. The clients know things. They have way more things to worry about than this programmatic campaign or this media campaign. That is why they're delegating this piece of their very important piece to you. And so it's up to you to continue letting them know these are the ways to do it. They're super smart, right? I feel like we don't give them enough credit because of the type of questions they ask sometimes, because of the type of requirement they have, or just because of the question that you just say, like, well, are we tracking conversion? And so at the end of the day, they know it's important, but because they have so much stuff going on in their head, right? Not even talking personally, but on professional perspective, that they don't always think about asking this question. So do yourself a favor, ask that question. Okay. Don't assume that somebody knows. Ask it. Don't ask in a way that it would hurt their feelings, maybe. There's a way to ask and finesse yourself, but that's super important information. And do the extra step. Like a lot of us just do good work. Okay, cute. We need to do great work. We need to do excellent work. And this is doing excellent work, is asking that extra question, to going that extra mile to measure that extra thing for those 9 extra type of audiences. That's what excellency looks like to me. And so kudos to you guys for doing what you're doing. That's why I was really honored and excited to partner up on this sponsorship, the 3-part series. I think it was very much a needed conversation for even some of our followers that have been asking questions over the last couple of months. And so kudos to you guys. And with that said, I know we're almost at time here, but I would love for you to end this podcast with a question I like to ask to all of the guests, is that if there's one thing you wish you knew when you first got started in this industry, think of if you were a freshman in this industry again, what would you want to tell yourself about that one thing? What was something that you learned now that you wish you knew before?
Um, that is a great question. One that I wasn't ready for. Let me think about it now. I would say, honestly, I mean, maybe this is more of like a general workplace thing, but for me, I came from working in research, which was like not a particular, it wasn't in a client facing role. Like,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a particularly like people oriented kind of, I don't know, maybe even industry. It's a lot of people who like read and write things. But the importance of, I don't know, being able to talk to people, being able to understand what they are looking for from you. Like you said before, trying to step in and kind of do everything that you can to help them, not just looking within the confines of like a particular, I don't know, I'm thinking of a client specifically, but like working within the confines of like, oh, well, you paid for like this and this alone, so like we're
Yeah.
not going to help you with that.
That's it.
The more expertise you have, I feel like the more you can offer that isn't necessarily like a concrete service or a concrete product. But yeah, I would say I guess maybe a lot of people get into jobs and don't expect how important it is to be able to speak to others.
Yeah.
So that, I guess.
I think this is such a good reminder is that you have a voice. Literally, you have a voice, figuratively and literally. And so it's important to, somebody needs to hear it. And I feel like everyone that's given a voice, at least today, has a message to share, and somebody needs to hear that message. Don't hold back. I know that sometimes it can be very daunting in the middle of a room full of people that may not look or sound like yourself, because I was that person many times before. And so have the courage to use your voice when it matters and when it is the most important, like standing up for yourself and others. So Georgia, thank you so much for dropping by. This was super lovely. We're a big fan of Draco. Again, if you have not heard episode 176 with Stuart Sullivan and episode 177 with Natalia Morales, I would strongly recommend you do so. And as always, this is not the last time you'll hear from the Draco team, because there's no way we can just not have them back on the podcast. So thank you again, Georgia, for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everybody that are joining the live stream or watching this replay. I will drop all of their information in the comment area. And also, if you are signed up to our newsletter, you'll have all of